Hello everyone, this is Terry. Welcome back to World of Warships Blitz. Today we'll be looking at this beauty, Her Majesty's ship, the Nelson. Named after some admiral of sorts, I don't really know. Must be unknown person. So, if you're not aware of her, the Nelson is a premium ship, a tier 7 British battleship. And that makes her the highest British battleship currently because there is no tech tree for the British battleships. And the only way to unlock her is to spend 350,000 free XP. You can get free XP either just by playing the game, or you can get free XP by spending gold to trade XP from your premium ships or fully upgraded elite ships. And I've managed to do that just playing the game, so if I can do it, so can you. So if you want to have the Nelson, that's what you gotta do. Now, why would you want to have the Nelson? Well, let's take a look at her. I mean, just visually at this point. Look at where the guns are. Yeah, they put them in the front. So the British had the glorious idea to say, this weird alignment with the whole superstructure in the middle, and then you've got some guns in the front and some guns in the rear. You know what? Let's not do that. Let's just put them all in the front. We've got the B turret super firing and the C turret sitting kind of behind it there. So what you can do is, well, you've got 2 turrets pointing forwards with 9 guns. All in all, it makes it 6 guns pointing forwards. And if you turn that ship to the side a little bit, then the other turret can shoot past the B turret here, and actually you can get them to bear. So that's relatively unique. But what else can the Nelson do? So let's have a look at her statistics and let's see what she's up to. She has, like I said, she's a tier 7 battleship. She has 43,000 hit points, almost 44, which puts her pretty much in the middle of tier 7 battleships. Now, the armor is a different story altogether. Citadel protection is kind of okay, fire flooding is okay, damage reduction is low with 13% for a tier 7 battleship. She is rather squishy for a battleship, and she doesn't take well to broadsiding at all. Speed isn't great. I think the only thing that's slower is the American tier 7, the Colorado. But the Nelson does 22 knots, and with a little bit of pushing, she gets maybe up to 23. So she's not a fast ship. She's not a particularly well-armored ship. She is still part of the Washington Naval Treaty, I believe. So they had to work within their tonnage restrictions. And these turrets are mighty heavy. So let's get to the guns, because the guns are the thing we really care about battleships. She gets 406mm guns, 9 of them, and that puts her kind of on par with most of the tier 7 battleships. I've got the reload time down to 19 seconds, and on the first glance, right, these are just your standard 400mm guns. They do almost 1800 armor-piercing damage. They do a surprisingly good amount of high explosive damage, and we'll get to that in a minute. Traverse speed is nothing spectacular, 5.3 degrees after everything's updated. And her secondaries, again, following the line here, she gets 150mm secondaries, similar to what the German battleships get. She has 12 of them, 6 twin turrets. They have a relatively long reload with 8 seconds, and 5.4 kilometers in the greatest of range, but they do a very decent amount of damage, especially against destroyers, because they only shoot armor piercing, but with that they can do some decent amount of damage. And she also gets 6 auto secondaries, which are high explosive 120mm guns. She don't have a great range, but, they're there, and you don't need to worry about them. You get them for free, so that's the thing. The anti-aircraft armament is abysmal. The large caliber anti-air is pretty much non-existent at this tier, and the small caliber anti-air is nothing really spectacular. It has a very short range, as usual. And the surface detection with 10.8 kilometers is, well, long, far, wide. It's a battleship. You will see it. So, what does make this thing special? Well, let's have a look at her again. So like I said, remember, right? you can, due to the unique turret alignment, you get 6 turrets to shoot forward. And if you push that ship a little bit to the side, you get 9 guns to point forward. So in a normal battleship, imagine this sea turret to be in the rear, right? If you're angling against an enemy and you've got that pointing to the right, you've got them all pointing slightly to the right, imagine that. This one being, the sea turret being in the rear behind the superstructure. Now, you realize that, oops, there's someone on the other side and I need to shoot at them. So you swing the ship around. Now, your A and B turrets have to traverse around the bow of the ship to the other side, which is relatively short of a distance. The sea turret, on the other hand, can't do that because the superstructure is in the way. So the darn thing has to go all the way around on the other side, which means that by the time it gets around, you're either dead or you've dealt with the problem by other means. Not so much in the Nelson, because what you can do here is you're pointing the guns to one side, you shoot slightly angled to the side off, you get all 9 guns to bear. You turn that ship a little bit around, and the sea turret actually can pass across the bow, like the other 2 turrets. So while it can't super fire across the B turret, it can pass under it. As you see, it's kind of neatly fitting under there. So it can pass by and with about the same amount of time, you can swing that around, get 9 guns pointing to the other side. That's one unique thing about the Nelson. The other unique thing, and let's get back to that, is the high explosive shells. So, your battleship, you get 400mm guns. The first thing you start off is with armor-piercing shells, because that's what the game defaults to on large calibers. And they're good. They look good on paper. I find them abysmal in practice. The penetration really lacks on the AP shells, especially at distance. I've bounced them off pretty much anything. And if you hit getting decent penetration instead of the usual semi-penetrations, it's just really... it's really a pain. By the way, have you seen that? Let me quickly show you, just in case you haven't. BattleWiki is a thing that showed up relatively recently, and most of the stuff you were already known, but the shells bit is interesting, because it kind of confirms something that I've been talking about for a while, and that was just purely based on observation, because there was no documentation whatsoever about this. Let's quickly go through that, right? So if you fire armor-piercing shells, you can do a regular penetration, which gives you 100% damage. If you do a citadel penetration, which means you're penetrating that special protected bathtub in the middle of the ship, you get whatever bonus there is on citadel penetrations for your guns. You get a half pen, which I think is not something that the PC version of this has. So you get a half penetration, which means you make 50 to 50% damage still. And this is relatively frequent if you can't really get through the armor. You can do an over-penetration, which happens if you shoot at very lightly armored ships, and then the shell just goes all the way through and comes out the other end without actually exploding. So while you punch a hole in the ship and cause 25% damage, you're not causing anywhere near the amount of damage you could have been causing because the shell just went through. Or you can do a ricochet, which means it just harmlessly bounced off the armor and you can't do anything at all. And armor-piercing shells, even though it's not documented here, have a very, very low chance of actually setting fires. That occasionally happens. High explosive shells. So let's see what these do. They can do a full penetration for 100% damage, or they can do a half pen. They cannot overpen, because they have a shorter fuse, so even if you shoot massive caliber high explosive shells at destroyers, you will not get an overpen. You will get either a penetration or a half penetration, which is unusual if you shoot them at destroyers, but yeah, you will do a lot of amount of damage with high explosive shells. So this kind of gives you a bit more of an idea how this works. They do fire damage. So again, fire damage is relative to the target's max HP, so it's not a uniform amount of damage. Fire damage is always relative to how much health the target has potentially. So your fire on a battleship will, in absolute points, do a lot more damage than your fire on a destroyer. You can also citadel with high explosive shells. This is something that I've done, even though it's not mentioned here. Okay, so I found that really nice to be confirmed, and it's kind of really important if you're trying to figure out how to play these things, because going back to the to the Nelson's shells, the high explosive shells do a lot of damage. Right? They almost do as much damage as the armor-piercing shells. Given the amount of bounces that I had with armor-piercing, I usually just do 50% damage for half pens or bounces, rarely actual proper pens. Most of the time, you're probably better off, or at least as good, firing high explosive. The high explosive shells on the Nelson are good. And they have a 19% chance of setting fire. I'll challenge you to find anything else in the game that has a 19% chance of setting fire. Now, let's not get into probability calculations here, right? Because obviously, if you have, say, a Soviet light cruiser or a Mogami or something that fires a lot of shells, smaller shells, which have a less chance of setting fire on things, at a higher frequency, overall, your chance of setting some fires is about the same, and the fire doesn't care if it's been set by a 400mm or by a 120mm gun, fires a fire. So it still is a really, really good ship to set things on fire with in terms of as battleships go. So as battleships go, setting things on fire is good. And given how well these high explosive shells work, plus you can actually use them against destroyers very easily because of how the guns are operating. Like what I mentioned earlier, you can die even though this thing is slow and sluggish. You can actually have a fair chance of dealing with enemy destroyers pretty well. So for the elite, I have gone with the elite gun operator because yes, having a bit more armor on this thing would, or a bit more health and armor in this thing would have been nice, but for me, she's not so much of a brawler like a German battleship would be. She's basically coastal artillery. That's how I would describe her. You find yourself a place in the battle with this thing where you have where you have a good control of both sides or both flanks with your range and your guns, because you can swing them around relatively quickly. And you keep pointing the nose towards the enemy because you have no reason whatsoever to broadside with this thing. You don't. Like other battleships, you kind of have to, at occasions, if you turn around and try to get all your guns to bear. With this thing, you don't. You just angle it a little bit and swing it around the other side if you need to. So this is a very stationary ship on occasion. But if it needs to... So I'm focusing on the guns with it. In terms of equipment, it's my standard battleship loadout. The main battery mod for reload time. The... damage control for fire and flood resistance, and some torpedo assistance here. Supplies, again, standard battleship loadout. I've got the crew rations for reload time. I've got hit points, and I've got ship speed because what else am I going to do? None of the other ones make much sense, and she doesn't have any anti-air to speak of anyway. If you're being focused by a carrier, find yourself some friends who have anti-air. And my commander, he actually got lifted from the Tier 6 British battleship, so I've got him on underwater protection and the torpedo alert as a standard for me in my Tier 1 and 2. Could have gone with high alert on Tier 3, but decided to go with the artillery maintenance because often I'm really not playing aggressive with this thing. She has so many advantages of being a turret, a big turret, that I'm playing her rather differently. So I tend to not get shot at most of the time that much. I've got Victorious Charge to get a bit of HP back, the Survivalist to get even more HP back, and the Generalist to get a bit more HP back. Because, again, as I said, she isn't the most well-armored battleship out there. She really is not. So, that said, the Nelson. Let's give her a spin, shall we? Okay, we've got 2 destroyers, 1 cruiser, 3 battleships, we're bottom tier, and an enemy carrier. And we're playing cage. There should be some spots in cage where we can park ourselves. Let's have a look. Depends which side we're starting on. It's usually a small island which is inside. We're on the other flank. Okay. Let's see what we're going to do. Probably use that island there and see what we can do from there. Okay, first thing, we'll switch over to high explosive. Because we want to fire high explosive shells with this thing. And you see, this is what I mean with guns. Look at the guns. Right. And there they go. And left.
Capture the target
there
area.
they go. You see that sea turret? So it's relatively quick to swing them around. Okay, we don't want to be the focus of attention of this carrier. Where is he going? Looks like he's going the other way. Okay, we'll use that island there for some cover. What's the other battleships up to? We've got a North Cal and another Nelson over there.
Capture the target area. Enemy target spotted.
Yeah, we have no anti-air whatsoever around. Undetected,
Capture
of course.
the target area. Enemy aircraft incoming.
And I've got the attention of the carrier, which is unfortunate. Okay, turn. Torpedoes incoming. Turn. Okay, thanks. Yep. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the other side, because the carrier has apparently
Enemy team captured the area.
interest in us, which is not something we want to have. Okay, all dealt with. When you're dealing with carriers, don't immediately damage con the fires, because oftentimes they double tap for. Oh, hello. Can we get a shot off of here? Secondaries out. Come on, turn in. Turn.
Team captured the area.
Kaboom. Yep, you do not rush a Nelson in a destroyer. Okay, back. Let's see if we can set some fires here. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, good boy. Destroyer is laying a smoke, actually. Here comes the Benson. Can we deal with the Benson? That might have gone too long. We've got a fire on him. Okay. Angle in. That'll do in terms of reversing. We don't want to leave the cap, so we actually want to control the cap. Benson's still alive, apparently. So let's open up on that Colorado back there. See what he's up to.
Torpedoes.
There come the Benson torps. Angle in. I'm gonna take one. That's fine. Colorado is reversing. American battleships are hard to set on fire. But they've lost 2 ships already. There we go. Me and my big mouth. The Benson's still up. Oh, there's another Nelson out there. You can deal with him. Let's move forward a little bit. See if we can get another fire on the Colorado. See, damage control that one. Nope, no fire. What's our other flank doing over there? Not looking so great. We've got 2 ships going over to that Colorado, so I might actually give him a parting shot and then... Yep, I am now the most exposed ship on this flank. Which is not great. So, well, that Benson just blapped that Nagato. Well done you, which means he's used his damage control. So let's park ourselves against this rock. Let's see if we can set him on fire. That's 2 fires that he's not going to be able, and a flood, and he's dead.
We hit the enemy.
Okay, 1 down. There's a North Carolina, who just took out our destroyer. So let's get some speed up. We do not want to give broadside to this guy. Guns out. Turn in, turn.
Enemy aircraft incoming. Target hit.
It's a fire on him. Some more torpedo hits from the carrier. Damage control that.
Under control.
And that's 3 permafires. Thank you. Yep. Ow. Okay, slow down. Use the island. Swing the guns around. Ow! Oh, we got another fire up. Okay, reverse. We're too close. Yeah, they can hurt. fire and a flood. Angle, angle, angle. Woohoo! Yeah, squishy battleship. Very squishy battleship. Reverse. Just give him the forward guns. Come on, another fire. Or is this flooding out? Yeah, it's just flooding out. Okay. Now that guy's dead. Oops. Parting shots from him. And the enemy carrier's over there. So guns around. Oh, he's turning. Crap. I still hit him. Oh, one shot hits him. Okay. We would have gotten him. Alright then. So that was the coastal artillery, otherwise known as the Nelson. We have First Strike, we've got Battlestar, we've got Confed, and we've got High Caliber. We have done 50,000 main battery damage, which is kind of what you'd expect with a tier 7 battleship. But we've done another 30,000 in fire damage. Yes, that. We've done a little bit with the secondaries. I haven't even gotten the auto secondaries to work just because there wasn't enough stuff to deal with. And we have, yeah, well done everyone for really controlling the cap. That was fun. So that's how I like playing this ship. She's a stationary ship mostly. You go forward a bit, go backward a bit, keep the nose towards the danger as much as you can. Destroyers should be very, very careful when they're getting close to a Nelson. Nelsons shoot high explosive by default, not like other battleships where you can get close and you're just like, oh yeah, you're just going to overpen for a couple thousand damage, but it's nothing that I can tank. And then I'm just going to blap you in the side. No, not with the torpedoes, no, not the Nelson. The Nelson does hurt. And she has, don't forget, she also has the 150mm secondaries, and these things hurt as well. So, surprisingly good at hunting not hunting, but dealing with destroyers that are rushing from odd angles. And the guns swing around both ways. Otherwise, yeah. If you faced by tier 8 battleships or anything else, try to keep your distance. These things hurt. Try to use concealment if you can, and use the range. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm enjoying this ship. It's very unusual from the terms of playstyle, because I usually like to play a lot more aggressively. She is really a find your position and hold that position against whatever comes. But you can have really, really fun games in her where you kind of have, you're the only one against 3 enemy ships, and you just try to tank and hold the position, and your team can clean up in the meantime. So you're not always doing 80, 90, 100,000 damage, but you can do, nothing is as annoying as being burnt down by another battleship, I personally find. So I love this ship. She's great fun. If you know how to play her, if you play her like any other battleship, you will get squashed, because even tier 6 battleships can relatively easily deal with your armor, and you don't have the health to spare. So if you play her like that, you will be successful and you will be having fun. So that's that. I have no idea what we're going to do next week. We'll see. My Wichita is on the way. It's not quite there yet. I think I've got about 150, 160,000 XP out of the 250,000 we need. So we'll be hard pressed to see if we can get that done by next week. But we shall see. Until then, everybody, have fun, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.